Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. Today, we have our technical advisor back on, Mr. Max Berre. He is from the south of France as well as Belgium, so you are an international god of travel. And today we talk about rail. So Max, take it away.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of
Thanks,
course.
Wendy. I guess thanks for inviting me on to talk about rail here in Europe. And I guess the main thing that when you look up rail that everyone wants to talk about, at least at the very surface level, at the press level, is the marvel that is high-speed rail, right?
Yeah.
And so when you look into it, there's actually, I'd say, a lot to read about in terms of high-speed rail.
Okay.
I guess the few most interesting things are that there is that it's actually the result in a huge way. It's a result of what the European Union's doing in the sense of they've got rail directives, and they've got tying together the EU countries by rail, and not just the countries, but also the major cities in the EU, right?
Yeah.
They've got this as a stated objective, tying these together. That being said, because rail is a technology that predates the EU by a lot, there's a lot of work to do in terms of harmonization of infrastructural standards.
Yes.
So
that's very important, actually.
yeah, and it's a challenge, right? Because basically we've got billions of dollars worth of investment, in the different, particularly the major countries who are maybe on standard X or standard Y.
Meaning the rail width, just so people understand, like the size of the rail, how the different types of tracks.
Well, yeah, it's the rail gauge for sure, but also the electrical system, right? The rail voltage.
Right. Yeah, so every country might be a little bit different. We're trying to get everybody coordinated on the same page.
Yeah, it's not easy.
No.
And in particular here in France, actually, there are basically two voltage standards, right? There's an AC and a DC system.
Mm-hmm.
And what's complicated is that different neighboring countries use these different systems. So like the French, basically there's a huge part of the country, including the part where I'm in, like the eastern part of the country, where they have to operate both systems in parallel.
I was talking to a man last year. His name is Robert Catalan, and he works in the Halbach array magnetics. And when he and I spoke, he said, I can push anything down a rail as long as, we have the technology, he has the technology, we can just push it down. Is there any discussion about magnetics? Because I know in Japan, I believe they use magnetics.
Well, not. I'm not familiar with any discussion about.
I mean, I'm not either. I'm just wondering if you came across something I didn't, because I think people are sticking to electric.
That's as far as I know as well.
Yeah.
Because basically, the Europeans are right now not too much. They're not too concerned about getting the highest possible performance out of their high-speed rail, which is what Japan is worried about. They're really worried more about getting everybody on the same page all the way across the Union. And in particular, one of the main obstacles towards connecting the continent with high-speed rail is actually one that people never think about, and it's the geography, right? Like in particular the Alps.
Yes.
Putting tunnels through the Alps is expensive, and nobody wants to pay for it. Even here where I am in the French Riviera region, there is no high-speed rail in the French Riviera, and it's the French Riviera. I mean, Monaco's here. Like, it's not that there's no money here, right?
Exactly. They have the money, but it's also, I mean, going through the mountain, but also up and over. That's a challenge as well.
Well, I guess, but I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but I mean, it seems that it might be easier to just drill through if you're going to be moving at high speed, if you're going to be moving the train at high speeds, right? You want to keep
Very
it as
true.
flat and stable as possible. Now, the thing that we've got here in this region is that, French high-speed rail, going north-south, goes all the way up as far as Brussels, so it goes into Belgium, and it goes south as far as Marseille, right? And then from Marseille to Milan, there's no high-speed rail. You have to move by slow rail, and then when you get to Milan, it's basically the central station of the Italian peninsula.
Oh,
And you pull in, and there's a quite large and extensive high-speed rail network on the Italian side, and it begins in Milan. So this basically 5 hour, or I guess we could say maybe 400 or 500 kilometer corridor where there's just slow train, great for tourism because it moves along the cliffs over the ocean.
very pretty.
It's extremely pretty, but it doesn't move fast, and so it's not that great for transitors. Now,
Exactly. Yeah. Go ahead.
there is a thing I wanted to say that I looked up. I looked up. There's an interesting working paper out there coming from the Community of European Railways, and so it's CER.BE, so Community of European Railways and Infrastructure Companies officially, right? They've got a 90-page working paper all about the economic footprint of rail. And since I'm an economist, that's my thing.
Okay.
And what I can say is that they basically split the rail. They split the rail impact into like 4 different areas, right? So we've got leisure, business travelers and freight, commuters, and urban development, right?
Yep.
And what they're basically saying is that, setting aside the leisure, which of course is nice, there's even rail tourism, and in France we see that a lot actually.
Oh yeah. They're trying to pick it up in the U.S. It's a slow progress.
Well, I mean, for me, it's kind of a hard sell. There are places where I like to get on the train and see the landscape, but I've actually met Swedish tourists with large cameras who get on the train in Marseille or in Avignon or something, and what they want to do is that they'll just want to go to, is that they actually flew down to Paris, or they flew to Marseille or something, and they got on the train just to take the photos, and then they got a flight waiting when they get to the other end, and they're heading back to Stockholm. Seen that many times.
Wow.
I think it's a stretch, but it's great for some people, I guess.
Yeah. No, some people love being on rail. I mean, for me personally, I love trains,
right,
because of the ease of it. So if I have to travel from LA to San Diego, I used to drive. It's a treacherous drive. There's traffic.
That's stressful, and also the danger.
Yeah, and hopping on the train is easy. I mean, it's slower, but I can sit back, relax, turn on my laptop, get stuff done.
And getting work done part is important.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't really have high-speed rail. They're kind of working on it here. And with respect to the EU and what you have, we are way behind. I mean, way behind.
Actually, I looked up some statistics on that, actually. So I wanted to say that,
because of course you did.
I'm an economist, right? And I looked up some statistics on that, and so it turns out that actually, in terms of the the rail infrastructure, just the track, right? Actually, the two sides are comparable. EU 350 million kilometers, USA or North America, so US and Canada 370 million. So roughly comparable. That being said, the usage of it, the American one is usually, or North American one is usually for freight. Meanwhile, the Europeans are pretty much all over the rails, and also the light rails, right? So metro and tram. And to give you an idea, apparently, according to Eurostat, the Europeans travel 10 times as many kilometers by car than by train, right? Meanwhile, Americans apparently drive 400 times as many kilometers by car than by train. So it gives you,
of course we do.
and that's with the same, and that's with the same amount of rail infrastructure being laid down, right? So the same amount of track. So
Well, I know for just because when I lived in New York and I would travel to Boston all the time, Amtrak created the Acela, which was their high-speed rail. We were all very excited for it, but there were certain states that would not allow them to travel past 85 miles an hour, 50 miles, whatever it was. It was not fast,
right,
which took up the majority of the trip between New York and Boston. I believe it was the state of Connecticut. So we'd travel really fast for about half an hour, then crawl, and then really
right.
fast through Massachusetts. And well, I mean,
Yeah,
it killed the purpose.
I can see that. I can see that it would. Yeah, I wonder if there's infrastructural reasons for it, or just
I
sort of
think it was a
NIMBY
safety
reasons for it.
thing. They were worried about people crossing the tracks.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. Yeah, no, I know that in the French Riviera, it's a lot to do with infrastructure. It's like you need specialized tunnels to be able to handle trains going at a certain speed
Yeah,
through through tunnels, basically.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, I get that.
took the UK a long time to develop them as well.
One
Um,
of the things that you mentioned previously about freight, if we had more freight on rail, we would definitely ease up the congestion we have on the streets, especially West Coasters. We don't have a,
really,
yeah, we would. I mean, whenever I drive out here in Los Angeles or anywhere in California, really, it's full of semis.
I
Just
see.
is. Yeah. And so I'm a big advocate. As you know, our next interview I'm doing is with Progress Rail, and they are hugely working on renewable energies, new technologies, and they're trying to get people out of their, get freight out of the street and onto a rail system. And I believe in Europe, you guys have that pretty much accomplished. I think a lot of what you do is
Well,
by.
the view in Europe is that the Americans are better at using rail for freight, whereas the Europeans are better at using rail for passengers. That's the view in Europe.
Oh wow,
Um,
I learned something.
now, that being said, like I was going to talk about the economic effects. There's actually a specific reason for the rail for passengers thing. You know, in addition to the fact that the EU is actively trying to tie the countries together, right?
Yeah.
Actively trying to get people to commute between the different countries on a regular basis as a matter of policy. Um, so besides that, we can say that the view at the EU level is that the economic effects, the economic knock-on effects, are basically in terms of the in terms of commuters, and business passengers, right? Because what commuters do is that this is actually more like your low speed short range rail, right?
Okay.
So think between Paris and the neighboring cities, right? The Paris and the Paris suburbs,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
example. And so what that does is that when that moves efficiently, what it does is it manages to make the viable metro area have be larger and have like an expanded labor force, right? So
Yes.
the thing is that the labor market for the Paris labor market is actually much bigger than Paris itself. It's like Paris plus everywhere you can get within an hour by rail. And I guess by high speed rail, you can get to Lille in 45 minutes. And Lille is the border with Belgium. Um,
Oh, very
now,
nice.
now that being said, that's also true. That's also true for high speed rail, and because you know Brussels is, let's say, an hour and 10 from Paris, right? But also both of those cities are about an hour and a half from London. Um, and on the other side, uh, Brussels is about an hour and a half from Cologne, right? So,
Okay.
and Cologne is, and basically Cologne is in the it's in Germany's sort of industrial heartland. But then at the EU level, there's this industrial heartland or this economic heartland, which is called the Blue Banana, right?
The
It's
blue banana.
hilarious, but it's
Okay.
really called like that. So if you were to Wikipedia it, you'll see what I mean. And so it's basically a banana-shaped region, which uh, which goes from London down to the European continent. It's curves across the Alps, right? So
Okay.
basically we're talking about the south of England, the the east of France, the west of Germany, and the entire Benelux, right? So Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Switzerland as well, going all the way down to Monaco, right? And there's even historical reasons that this economic heartland exists, but it's basically the most relevant part of the EU's economic geography, right? Rivaled by the golden banana, which kind of takes the Mediterranean coast of France and then northern Italy, right? So basically, these two areas are like they're a bit comparable to the east and west coast of the United States as being like where all the commerce happens and where all the industry.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so basically the thinking is that connecting these areas and making commuting possible and viable within these areas is basically going to have huge economic productivity and knock-on effects, and that ranges from what they call agglomeration effects, which basically means people being in the same place and being able to cluster and do business with each other and bounce ideas off each other. So it goes from that to like supply chains to like work commuters. So the economic effects are huge.
Yeah, we need, I mean, now that I've learned from you that we have more efficiency in our freight than we do in our travel passenger, we need to fix that, especially here, because I know people that get a lot of anxiety when they have to travel by plane. Going through security is challenging.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And there are a lot of people that travel for work. And if we had a better transportation system on rail, I think that would alleviate a lot of unnecessary stress and anxiety that people may have.
Well, I have to say, if you want to compare it to flying, I would say that maybe the one of the difficult things about flying that nobody takes into consideration is actually the time effort and cost it takes to actually get to and from the airports, right?
Yes.
Because people tend to forget that the airport is generally not in the city center. Okay, I'm originally from the Washington D.C. area, and that is a bit of an exception because the local airport, which is today called Reagan National, although in my day it was called not just National.
Just,
right?
yeah, Washington National. Then there's the one in Reston, Virginia.
Yeah, that one they call Dulles.
Dulles, yeah.
Yes, named after a former CIA director.
I did not know that. No, I mean, our airports, I mean, so ESJ took a little break because I was traveling, and the airport is a challenge. I mean, it's busy, it's chaotic, traffic is backed up forever.
Right.
And if we can, I mean, when I was traveling through Europe, because I had family that lived there for a while, easiest thing in the world. My sister lived in Switzerland. We'd jump the 𝑗𝒍𝒆, we'd go to Paris, easy peasy. It was comfortable.
And the rail drops tends to put you in the city center. Like you step off the train,
and you walk.
Yeah, and you walk to where you're going. Like some pretty extreme examples. I would say that so Paris is actually a bit of a trouble spot because there's no through traffic, right? There's no through tunnels, so you can't commute through Paris, but you can commute to Paris pretty efficiently, right?
I learned the hard way about the north, south, east, and west trains because I was in the wrong station. But I was in the wrong place.
yeah. Brussels used to be that way for a time, but they actually dug a tunnel to connect them.
That's smart.
But yeah, I have to say that I've definitely had meetings, at Paris Montparnasse, or near Paris Montparnasse, and so basically it's a matter of stepping off the train, and going maybe one or two metro stops.
Yeah, that's what I ended up doing in a mad rush sprint when I realized, because what was I doing? I was going to I think the Netherlands or something, and it was a midnight train, overnight train, and I'm watching the Flipboard. We're going back in time, folks. This is a long time ago. Watching the Flipboard and no trains. It was like probably 20 minutes to boarding time and no trains were listed. And I realized I was in the South Station and I needed to be in the North Station.
Oh dear.
I've never moved so fast in my life. So connecting that would be awesome. The metro was very efficient. But
see, Paris is going to have a problem with the infrastructure of that, because the problem is that beneath Paris, there's already the Paris metro, right? And then
Yeah.
beneath that, there's a secondary metro called the RER, right?
Oh,
So in essence, to dig a series of tunnels, what they need to do would be to dig them beneath those of the RER, which are already, I think, 100 meters down, right? Like,
oh, good Lord.
yeah.
You're going to hit
So,
magma at some point.
yeah, the cost of this, and not only that, it's underneath Paris, right? Like the cost of this, is going to be huge, and that's why.
Also, artifacts. When I was traveling through Italy, I was traveling through Rome, and the big joke was they keep trying to build more subway stations in Rome, but they keep running into artifacts and archaeological sites, and they have to stop.
Yeah, I've heard similar things said about Athens, and in fact, if you take the Athens metro, they have glass cases, which sort of show the artifacts that they dug up in the spot where the metro station is.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
That's really neat. It does, slow down the process. I get that, but I love seeing that personally.
it is pretty fancy.
So, in closing with rail and transport, and I know we didn't get too into heavy detail because, again, this is for the general public to understand the need of rail. And I do appreciate all the economic research you did, because that is vastly important. But if you just had a couple takeaways for what we could do better in the States, what you've seen, what would those be?
Right. Well, the first thing I'd say is that I think the easiest quick win that we could get out of this would be if we would upgrade the existing rail lines to high-speed rail, because the idea is, like, you don't have to create new rail lines, so you're not going to have any sort of NIMBY problem. It's just a question of upgrading the infrastructure, right?
Which is smart.
Yeah. And then I guess the other thing is, like, look into ways of connecting city to city, which I understand that is going to be really a challenge. And then lastly is going to be connection between rail and light rail, right? So connection rail metro.
Yeah.
Because my memory of being on the East Coast is that there's a few rail stations which have metro connections, but a lot of them don't. So like, you get to some place, like last time I took New Jersey rail, I stepped off the train in Trenton and I'm in a parking lot and I'm like, okay, now what?
Figure it out.
Yeah.
I know, I've been in that situation. Jersey
been...
Transit's not bad though. I mean, I would always take it from Newark into the city, and it wasn't so bad. Boston got better. I used to live in I've lived everywhere, folks. So when I lived in Boston, if I wanted to go to Logan Airport, it used to be you take the train to the end of the line and then take a shuttle bus, and the shuttle bus would drop you off at the airport. So they finally connected all of that, probably, I think, 15 years ago.
Yeah, there's a key takeaway. Integrating the transit systems is really key in terms of getting a viable transit system off the ground.
Yeah.
Especially when some of these transit systems exist sort of geographically, like on top of each other or near each other, and they connect poorly. It's really a place where I think progress can be made quickly. That's my impression, because the infrastructure is already there.
The infrastructure, right? You're absolutely right. I think it's silly when people say they need to build a new rail line. We have the infrastructure, just need to upgrade it. But you know what always comes into play, and I know I'm opening a can of worms saying this, is politics. Everyone wants a piece of something, or they want their say in it, or they want their opinion. We need to just kind of put that aside and focus on the greater good.
Actually, there's another interesting EU angle on this as well. Since you mentioned that, because one thing I saw looking into high-speed rail is that there's actually sort of a constellation of competing train manufacturers who are out there, who are in the business of selling rail. I'm going through my papers right quick.
No way. Okay, so they have a vested interest in new rail.
Well, on one hand, yes, but on the other hand, the thing is that a lot of these countries are national champions, right? So you've got Alstom and Siemens, which are very big and very able to influence their domestic country's politics, right? So Alstom being French and Siemens being German. Now, I guess the deal is that at the EU level there is a competition. There's a bit of antitrust law, which is a major divergence from U.S. law, right? Which is called state aid, right? It's like the banning of state aid, right?
Oh, okay.
And so what that does, and just to be clear, we're talking about Article 107 of the TFEU, for the Treaty for the Functioning of the European Union.
Okay.
And so what it does is it basically prevents a country from intervening at the European level on behalf of its own national champions, right?
Love it.
So
Love it.
it's great, because what that means is that, if such a system didn't exist, if such laws didn't exist, then we could expect the entire train market to consist of Alstom and Siemens, right? So it's basically the guy subsidized by Germany versus the guy subsidized by France.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, in the real world, what we've also got, not only Talgo, which is a Spanish manufacturer, we've got Ferroviari, which is an Italian manufacturer, and we've got non-EU players as well. We had Bombardier, which got bought out by Alstom in 2021, so last year.
I didn't know that.
Huh. Yeah, I just found out as well. When I was looking this
up.
It
was very quiet.
Well, I mean, there were bigger things in the news that year. We'll put it that way.
Very true. Very true.
And Hitachi as well. Hitachi is also a provider of high-speed trains to the European market. And so, if the ban on national champions, if the ban on defending the national champions didn't exist, in the interest of tying together the European markets, basically it'd be difficult to have a competitive market space where you have, not just the main European countries train players, but also some of the smaller European economies, and also the Japanese and the Canadians being involved.
Absolutely. No, I love that law because it kind of keeps the playing field level. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, exactly.
So in closing, because we've reached our 30-minute mark.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's okay. So closing out, we need to, I love the fact that you found that law that everyone needs to work together, because that's hugely important. And we do need to get more people back into trains. It is a pretty efficient way to work. So on that, Max, I look forward to our next conversation. Okay. I look forward to all of the knowledge you bring, because you're spectacular with what you do.
Thank you.
You're a pleasure. You always have been a pleasure to talk to. So your knowledge is immense. I'm not going to lie.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Anytime. So on that, guys, thank you so much. We will see you next time. Have a great day.